Great. Okay, looks like we're ready to go. Everyone ready? All right, so let's get on the record. No. It's not gonna work. All right, this is docket 6680 DR 114, the petition for declaratory ruling and complaint of Wisconsin Power and Light Company against Scenic Rivers Energy Cooperative service extension in the town of Paris and the village of Dickeyville, Grant County, Wisconsin. Let me just let the person in here. All right, so this has been noticed as a public session today, so we will be able to take comments from the public if anyone is connected from the public. So can't tell exactly from the participants in the room, so let me just ask if anyone in attendance is a member of the public and wishes to make a comment. No? Okay, I don't see any members of the public on Zoom, so therefore we can switch over to the party session. I wanted to note that we will still be able to receive public comments in writing up until Friday, May 17th. And the details on how to go about doing that are on the commission's notice of hearing. So there's two options, either filing online or mailing it to us. And aspects on how to do that are on the screen share as well. So that'll be recorded on YouTube and available on the commission's YouTube hearing channel in case you can't get to the notice. So just a note there. So let's switch over to the party session and we can start with appearances in alphabetical order from the participants. So we'll start with the Public Service Commission staff.
Evan White appears on behalf of the commission.
All right, and Scenic River Electric Co-op.
Your Honor, attorneys James Woywood and Sarah Arbaje appear on behalf of SREC.
Okay, and Wisconsin Power and Light.
Good morning, Your Honor. David Zappo and Hutch Blackwell LLP on behalf of Wisconsin Power and Light Company, and with me is Zach Ramirez.
All right, great, thanks. And just to just ask a brief question, is the service list complete and accurate for everyone? You should have got a copy yesterday. Any corrections you need to make?
None from WPL, Your Honor.
Yeah.
None from SREC.
Oh, great. All right, so we have 3 witnesses, so I'm not expecting too much in terms of length of the hearing, but we want to get through all the preliminary aspects first. So let's take a peek at the offered evidence list. There were just a few comments that I had noted in terms of filing suggestions and some. Do we have any refiling? I don't have any refiling notes here. We also did receive by email one document from Wisconsin Power and Light, cross-examination document, so we can have that available for that portion of the hearing. Yeah, just a note, you can see already, I'm sure you've seen it already. So we did I asked parties to create the petition complaint document for Power and Light and the response document for SREC. And I probably wasn't clear enough, but what I meant for you guys to do is to, instead of actually refiling the document, just link it from the ERF version so we don't have a duplicate. It's just for the future. Hopefully we won't be here in the future for this kind of case, but for the future, we'll kind of mimic what we do with applications and the data request responses from staff. This way we're not, refiling the same thing. We can just use that link to go right back to the original filing. A minor detail, so don't need to replace that document, just something for the future. We did get an errata also from Power and Light, just to note that for the record. So I can, once we get these documents verified by witnesses, I can accept them for the record. I just want to make sure in terms of the document, the offered evidence list itself, any corrections or additions we needed to make, and maybe something I might have missed, or does that document look accurate?
Your Honor, just one thing that I noticed that maybe now is a good time to bring up.
Sure.
In direct WPL Olson, I noticed on, I think 2 pages I saw, page 3 and page 9. There was, I think, a transposition of the numbers for the tax parcel ID numbers, which is kind of confusing in this case because there's both a 958 and a 985. So I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention.
Okay. Yeah, there are a variety of tax ID numbers here, and we want to make sure we get those correct. So,
For example, page 3, line 14.
okay.
I think the one ending in 0000 should actually be 985. If I'm research being correct.
Let's just go off the record, just double check.
I believe that's actually correct. As currently drafted, I'm just also one. So 985 is actually the foundry property. Which we have not characterized as being part of the premises. 958 is the northernmost portion of the premises. So I believe this is correct.
If you refer to Exhibit Olson 1, then what Attorney Zappo is describing is a little bit easier to see.
Yeah.
So the 000, because there's also a 985000, which is referenced on the next page.
Yes.
That's line.
13 of page 4.
Yeah.
Right. Correct. So again, that is right. Yeah, yes, Your Honor, right there. It's that
I'm
parcel to the south.
Yeah.
It's not, again, it's not what we've defined as comprising the premises, but there's been some discussion about that parcel and what's going on there. That's the foundry property just south of the premises.
Okay, so 985 is not included in the definition of the premises.
Not correct, not as
Yeah.
we characterized, correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
No problem.
Okay, so did you have any other outstanding issues about parcel numbers, or you're satisfied?
That was the only thing I saw.
Okay, so, yeah, let's get on the record then, and, okay, so Attorney Weitz, did, indicate, some question about parcel numbers that were, detailed in the Olson Direct. However, a discussion off the record, indicates that those, numbers are correct. So we won't need to see any changes to the testimony. I guess I would say, and just in case, if parties could just review that testimony, their written testimony, and just double check to make sure all the parcel numbers are correct, and if there needs to be a change, just let us know. You can email Attorney Weitz in case you need to refile for that purpose. Okay, so just let me follow back on whether we need to make any changes to the offered evidence list. Anything missing or needs to be adjusted? No?
No, Your Honor, no adjustments to the list as currently constructed. We also would note that Scenic Rivers would like to raise a couple issues under.
I'm sorry, who would like to raise?
Scenic Rivers, SRDC, sorry. I would like to raise a couple issues under part E2E of the facilitating matters that could touch on the content of the offered evidence.
Okay. Okay, so, all right, well, before I accept those documents, so let's move on to that. Let me just grab our facilitating matters order for the screen, so off the record, please. The docket number. No, I got it. Okay, so let's get our. So while we're off the record, can you just give me that citation, Attorney Wywood?
Sure, it's gonna be, page 14 of 17 of the facilitating matters order. I refer to it as part E2E. It's actually part E1E, but there's consecutive ones, if that makes sense. So I think, yeah, all agree that's really, should be the two under hearing preparation.
Okay, so I have it on page 13, is that?
Yes, that's what I'm referring to, specifically.
Oh, so let's get on the record then and discuss that. So okay, Attorney Wywood, you did indicate you have something to discuss about the offered evidence. Can you go ahead and discuss that with us now?
Yes, Your Honor, pursuant to the facilitating matters order stating if no scheduled round of filing remains subjected to hearing before the call of the first witness, that is what SREC wishes to do. There's, I think, a total of 3 discrete issues, the first of which I'll address is a portion of Ms. Olson's rebuttal on behalf of Power and Light.
Yeah, that's everything I have. Should. Off the record. So the version I gave you, all had rebuttal on it, or did I miss it? Look at that.
It, yeah, the version I'm looking at, Your Honor, it looks like Sir Rebuttal isn't there.
So this was not complete. You guys.
I suppose the Power and Light does not wish to offer its rebuttal, I don't object.
Right, well, that doesn't make it happen. Oh, so the Olson's rebuttal.
And also, I guess while we're looking at that prior sheet, Mr. Knapp's rebuttal, then would also need to be reflected on the.
Yes, well,
revised.
let's get to your objection
Sure,
first. I
thank
can
you.
fix the list after the hearing.
You know, this, our objection,
Yeah, let's get on the record now.
Sorry about that. Go ahead.
thank you. Your Honor, our objection relates specifically to page 5, Sir Rebuttal WPL Olson 5. This is going to be a portion of the answer starting at a sentence that begins. Sorry, now.
Just give me the line numbers.
Yeah, we're gonna be looking at line 22 of Olson 5 through line 8 of Olson 6.
Okay, so the question involved here is on line 11, starting with at rebuttal SREC Knapp 6 through 7. Mr. Knapp responds to your characterization of a meeting between WPL and SREC in December 2022. How do you respond? And your objection is to lines 22 through 8. Is that right?
That's correct, as well as related testimony that is referring back to this passage, and that second piece of testimony is at Olson 7, line 18, as I noted earlier, through line 20 of Olson 7 at a semicolon.
Okay.
And you're still within the surrebuttal, correct?
That's correct.
Anything else for Olson?
On this surrebuttal,
Right,
no other portions.
no other portion. Okay, okay. So what's the basis of your objection?
Your Honor, SREC objects to that portion that we've just highlighted on the grounds of relevance, lacking foundation, it's speculative. It's also unfairly prejudicial to SREC. The statements that we've just highlighted are speculative conclusions. They are not testimony, they are advocacy. They are assigning ill motive and ill intent to SREC regarding the installation of an underground distribution line that we can all agree only ran through a portion of the premises to reach a meter pedestal that wasn't even installed on the premises. And elsewhere, earlier in Ms. Olson's same surrebuttal testimony, page 2, beginning of line 3, she states, there is no question that WPL will be providing permanent retail electric service to the new foundry, and therefore no need to address service to that specific facility as part of this dispute. Simply put, it would have made little sense for WPL to ask the commission for a ruling on it.
Sorry, can you slow down with it? Simply put?
Simply put, it would have made little sense for WPL to ask the commission for a ruling on it. So that's Power and Light making clear that they're not interested in the commission making a ruling about the status of any service to the parcel south of the premises, the parcel that is going to have the new foundry. Yet at the same time, they want to use that as a sword against SREC and say they clearly were installing that to manufacture a 500-foot rule controversy. This case isn't about the 500-foot rule. There is no 500-foot rule controversy in this case. It's a matter of, did SREC install facilities on premises that was served by Power and Light? Does Power and Light have a forever into the future an exclusive right to serve what they've characterized as the premises? And does the commission have grounds to order removal of 2 meter pedestals, a pole that's part of the distribution system of SREC, and an underground and abandoned and de-energized line? That's the line that they're referring to in assigning motive. This is wholly lacking relevance. These conclusions, again, like I said, they're unfairly prejudicial. They're inflammatory. It's simply speculative. Wanting the commission to accept Power and Light's conclusions about SREC's intent to serve something, to manufacture a controversy in order to allow it to serve something that isn't even in controversy in this case. This case is not brought by SREC for a declaration that it has a right to serve a boundary. The testimony doesn't even make sense, quite frankly, to allege that this was about manufacturing a 500-foot controversy because SREC did not have a distribution facility within 500 feet of the future foundry site. Therefore, it's going to install something that's 950 feet. in order to come within that rule, it doesn't make sense. It's irrelevant, it's inflammatory, and it should be stricken and not admitted to the record.
Okay, so just curious, you had an objection also to. Was there another objection you had, for a different filing, or is this?
There were the two portions of this
Right,
filing,
right.
the objection that I just stated. I have one objection related to the errata filing.
Oh,
And I guess we can call it an objection, something that, we'd like to address the court, sorry.
Is it-
Just the judge,
Mhm.
Your Honor, on the document emailed by Power and Light yesterday for potential cross-examination.
so, is that related to this, passage or your rebuttal?
No, those are separate issues.
Separate, okay, so let's get a response from Power and Light on the Olson's rebuttal first.
Yeah, Your Honor, obviously we would oppose this motion. I think the arguments being made by SREC here go really more to the weight and the credibility of the evidence. And they're entitled to cross-examine Ms. Olson on her statements and her foundation for those statements. I don't think it's nearly as prejudicial as SREC is claiming here. I also want to note that it is true, we're not requesting a ruling from the commission on who has the right to serve the foundry as part of this proceeding, because we're already going to be serving it. That said, the foundry does bear some relevance to this dispute, because the owner of the foundry, A.Y. McDonald, also owns a significant portion of the premises. And is redeveloping that portion of the premises in connection with the foundry. I think it's interesting also that the cited portions of Ms. Olson's testimony, she's responding to a statement that Mr. Knapp made about why the underground line was installed. And I believe he says, I don't know if it's in rebuttal or sur rebuttal, but I believe he says that it was installed to serve a meter pedestal located on the property on which the foundry is going to be located. And she has, I think, it would make any sense to strike her testimony, because she should have the right to respond to that. The other thing I want to note is, there is evidence in the record that J&C Realty, the owner of both the premises and the foundry property before A.Y. McDonald took over, submitted a service application to SREC to install facilities not just on the premises, but also on that foundry property. And so, again, I think Scenic Rivers can argue or question Ms. Olson in cross-examination about her statements. They can argue in their briefing that those statements aren't, founded or whatever. But I think the testimony is clearly relevant to this proceeding. It's clearly responsive to Mr. Knapp's testimony. And I just don't think there's any basis to strike it.
Okay, does staff have anything to add?
No position.
Any response or reply from SREC?
Your Honor, we've been very careful in identifying a specific portion of the testimony. And that is testimony saying that Power and Light believes SREC has manufactured or is attempting to manufacture a 500-foot rule of controversy. In what way is that relevant at all to any of the issues in this case? Like I said, this is not about the 500-foot rule controversy, because there is no 500-foot rule controversy. But furthermore, the question specifically, sets up Mr. Knapp responds to your characterization of a meeting between WPL and SREC in December 2022. How do you respond? So he provided context to explain a meeting that was referenced by Ms. Olson, and I believe it was for direct testimony. This idea of assigning a motive of manufacturing intent to manufacturing a controversy, that's really not responsive in any way to this particular question, but more importantly, it's not relevant. It's unfairly prejudicial. It's, I think it's also likely to confuse, quite honestly, because while there are aspects, I don't disagree that there's aspects of that parcel and A.Y. McDonald's ownership that are relevant to this case. But to draw that conclusion, to make that conclusion, to advocate for that conclusion, it's without asking for the commission to actually reach its own legal conclusion about that parcel. I think it makes it irrelevant and improper.
Judge, can I just add one more?
Sure.
Short, just briefly. I just also want to note that there is already evidence in the record, I believe, in one of Ms. Olson's exhibits, that Scenic Rivers was in fact in contact, and this might be the exhibit here, Your Honor, was in fact in contact with AYM about providing service to the foundry. That evidence wasn't objected to. I think Ms. Olson's testimony is corroborated by Scenic River's own internal correspondence. Again, I agree, service to the foundry isn't at issue in this dispute, but given sort of the interconnected ownership of, the foundry and portions of the premises, and frankly, I do think, the intent of the respondent in this case, it is relevant in that it explains why they were installing, or at least tends to explain or tends to show why they were installing these facilities on and across parcels that WPL was actively serving. I do think that's relevant to the commission's consideration. I think it has looked at that kind of conduct before in previous territorial disputes. So I think it's also, I do think it's relevant in that way as well.
Your Honor, if I may briefly.
Go ahead.
If Exhibit Olson 3, I believe it was.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you about that.
If that exhibit was a basis for that speculative conclusion, then why wasn't that speculative conclusion made with the corresponding testimony? Why did they wait until rebuttal to file that? We should be funneling testimony with each successive round of pre-file testimony. This is an outlandish claim. If those exhibits, if the content of that exhibit stood for that proposition, they would have said so when they filed that exhibit. They did not do so. They waited until the rebuttal. It's clear what is going on here. This is just meant to, I think, inflame commissioners if they read the testimony. I'd ask the court, I'd ask Your Honor to strike it.
On Attorney Warwick's last point, Your Honor, about the timing for the filing.
Yeah, go ahead.
May I speak to that?
Yes.
If you would refer to rebuttal SREC map 9, lines.
Hang on just a minute. Rebuttal SREC map 9.
Map 9,
Okay, so grab that.
lines 16 through 19, Your Honor.
Okay.
So this
So
was,
it's the question, just to give us a little background
Yeah.
on this for the record.
so in this, so Mr. Attorney Warwick raised why was this provision of Ms. Olson's rebuttal raised in rebuttal. And the context for Your Honor is that in the immediately preceding testimony round of rebuttal, Mr. Knapp states in his rebuttal testimony at NAP 9, lines 16 through 19, that in characterizing the 950-foot underground distribution line, Mr. Knapp says this is not particularly unusual. An area where service territories converge, distribution infrastructure and services of utilities can be located quite close to each other. WPL files the rebuttal testimony, providing the context Ms. Olson does about the 950 foot, and in fact that it is unusual.
Okay, so I'm gonna rule on this now. So I'm gonna deny a motion to strike. I think it's relevant in the sense that it will provide a full picture of the situation here for the commission. There's an opportunity to cross Ms. Olson, but I think the witness does, found, the statement, the bottom of Olson, surrebuttal Olson 6 with, the exhibit Olson 3 is cited on page 7 of that testimony. So there is foundation for the statement, and there's the statement has enough basis for the respondent to cross and seek clarification of this from the witness. And commission is well aware of the controversies here and will stick to it. Its ruling will be appropriate. I don't think it will be, swayed in any way by any incendiary, as the respondent terms this testimony being incendiary. I don't think the commission will be swayed by incendiary remarks should the commission find them to be so. But I think the information's important to complete the record, and it does respond to rebuttal of the respondent. So let's leave that in, and we can move on to the errata. Attorney Waywood, you had an objection on the errata testimony? Oh, and let's move on. Also, there's another section of that, right? Was page 9 of the rebuttal? The part 2, just want to make sure we roll on that as well.
Yeah, I guess I understood your ruling as applying to
Both?
both
Okay.
portions. Yeah.
All right, so we won't, okay. All right, so the errata, this isn't how we're here. I think. There we go. What portion of the errata does SREC take objection?
Your Honor, at Direct W. Pill Olson, page 5, line 9, the addition of a footnote. Your Honor, I guess I would simply point out that my understanding of errata is to correct testimony. It seems to me that adding a footnote is going beyond correcting testimony. It's adding new testimony. So I wanted to raise that.
Okay, well, thank you for doing that, and I think this is the opportunity to review errata, so we should take that seriously. So we're looking at direct WPL Olson, page 5, line 9, include, and the proposal in errata is to include a new footnote 1. Let's check the testimony.
And whenever you're ready, Your Honor, I can just provide some comments.
I will ask you over. Oh, that was line. Rada is, let's go, page 5, line 9, okay, off the record. You're already off the record, that's. You know the good thing. Okay, so let's look at. So let's get on the record for this. So on page 5 of Olson's direct, starting on line 6, it's a question that asks the witness to describe the current ownership of the premises. Discusses that J and C owns the northernmost portion of the premises. It also refers the commission to exhibit WPL Olson 1. So the footnote itself adds. Okay, so the footnote indicates that J and C has a partial ownership interest with AYM in a certain tax parcel. So that, I'm assuming, is not shown on the exhibit.
On Olson 1, Your Honor?
On Olson 1.
I don't believe it is.
Yes, so let's see how it could be. Okay, so I guess to the extent it's simply providing a complete picture of the ownership of the premises. That's a valid errata simply to complete the record and make the record more accurate. However, I need to hear from Wisconsin Power and Light as to what the consequences of this errata are. So is it, so the partial ownership, how is that relevant to the case?
I think it's, I think in terms of legal relevance, I think one of the factors of the premises rule is, nature and change and ownership of the premises that is the subject of the dispute. So from that perspective, I think it's important for the commission to have an accurate picture, not only of how the land was owned in the past, but what the current ownership is. And and that was really the only reason we added this, was just to make sure the record is complete and accurate. And I'll just also add that this is entirely consistent with Mr. Knapp's direct testimony, page 8, I think it's lines 24 and 25. Where he also notes that that parcel is co-owned by those two entities. So I don't think there's any dispute about the accuracy of this statement, and we just wanted to make sure that the record was consistent so that, the commissioners are reviewing, they don't see Mr. Knapp's statement there and then Michelle's directing it, get confused, basically.
Okay. So witness Olson.
Yes.
How about the statement of facts? Is it in there?
The stipulation, Your Honor?
Stipulation.
Yeah, I don't believe the stipulation addresses the ownership.
Okay. So is there any prejudice being claimed in terms of the footnote?
It's not a matter of prejudice, Your Honor. I think it's one, whether it's appropriate for errata, ultimately, that's probably neither here nor there. But now you also have, I guess, the inconsistency with the corresponding Olson exhibit showing the tax parcels where they labeled ownership. And that's not an SREC exhibit, that's a Power and Light exhibit.
Okay.
Maybe the solution is ultimately correcting that exhibit as well.
So it was Olson 1.
That's correct. Olson 1. And yeah, we would have no objection to updating Olson 1 so that it reflects what's in her testimony.
Okay. All right. So that's fair. So yes, why don't we refile Olson 1 to reflect the joint ownership of that parcel? And I'm not sure if you had a particularly phrase it as an objection, but I'll overrule that just so we're clear. And yes, errata is what's expected generally in errata is typos and spelling mistakes, that kind of thing. But as well as with the transcript corrections, the goal is to make sure we have a complete and correct record. And to the extent that that doesn't prejudice one side or another, I will consider those requests. And in this case, I'll approve that change to Olson Direct. Okay. Any other pending or new motions? Nothing pending there.
Your Honor, just the last issue that I referred to earlier, I guess would effectively be a motion eliminated to exclude this bill template that Power and Light provided via email yesterday. It's not relevant to these issues in this case. To my knowledge, Power and Light employees do not and have not worked for SREC in its billing department. Mr. Knapp isn't involved in the billing department. He does not oversee the billing department. So in addition to not seeing relevance of that document for use today. Also, I don't think there's gonna be a proper foundation for anyone to even talk about that document, let alone connect it to issues in the proceeding.
Okay. Well, I would just as well let them ask those questions and we'll see if you can object to foundation or the questions are objectionable. We can proceed at that point, but I'll let that play out on cross.
And Your Honor, as Your Honor has seen throughout the testimony, SRAC is regularly referred to the premises as being characterized by WPL as the premises being enclosed. Through the course of today's hearing, I'm not going to attempt to use air quotes and ask the record to reflect that, but if I would just like the record to reflect that by phrasing or asking about the premises, and SRAC is not waiving its arguments or positions that it had set forth thus far in the case.
Okay,
If I just may, I'm glad you mentioned that because we may also refer to it as the premises just to avoid any objections. We're not trying to box here. It's an easy shorthand.
okay, so it's premises as defined by Wisconsin Power and Light. That's what we mean by
Correct.
the word. Okay,
And just one point of clarification, so that does not include the southernmost parcel with the AYM facility, correct?
That's correct.
And that's SREC's understanding as well?
Yes.
Okay.
okay, just want to go off the record for a second. Noticing a issue here with the cameras, but I don't think it's fixable at this point. Right. Okay. So let's get on the record. Any other matters we need to discuss? I think, one thing I'll say is I can accept the offered evidence. It's listed on the offered evidence list plus the Sir rebuttal from, Olson and Knapp. And I believe there were also additional exhibits as well.
Ms. Olson did not have any exhibits with her server model.
No? Okay, yeah, so otherwise, doesn't look like any additional exhibits. Okay, so with that, once we get those documents verified, we'll put them in the record. Otherwise, I think we're good to take our first witness. So why don't we begin with WP&L, have your witness take the witness stand here.
WPL calls Michelle Olson to the stand.
Swear you in, raise your right hand. You swear or affirm, tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Yes, let's see. All right, go ahead.
Good morning, Ms. Olson.
Good morning.
Am I in the way? Or is this thing in the way?
Yeah, I just moved to the side to see around the speaker.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
Ms. Olson, did you file or cause to be filed direct rebuttal and surrebuttal testimony and 12 exhibits in this proceeding?
Yes,
To the best of your knowledge and subject to the corrections that we just discussed on the record, is that testimony and those exhibits true and accurate?
yes,
If I asked you the same questions in your pre-filed written testimony today, would your answers be the same?
yes.
With that, the witnesses are available for cross.
Okay, so all those documents are in the record and we have questions for the witness.
Yes, Your Honor, thank you.
Go ahead.
Good morning, Ms. Olson. My name is James Lloyd. I represent Scenic Energy Cooperative. If at any point you can't hear a question or I'm not clear, please just ask me to repeat myself. Ms. Olson, you've caused to be filed exhibit Power and Light Olson 1, correct?
Yes,
Your Honor, if you could bring that up on the screen for reference.
Can you move the mic a little closer to you? Can you move the mic a little closer to you?
Oh, this one.
Right. If that helps, it's probably pretty small from your, your end there.
That's okay. Ms. Olson, can you see exhibit one, Olson one, from your vantage point?
Yes,
On exhibit one, there is a pink line emanating from the west side of Old Highway Road. Do you see that line?
yes,
And that line is, per the key, is labeled temporary service to boundary, is that correct?
yes,
And is that in fact the temporary distribution facility that you referred to in your testimony as being installed in November 2023 to provide service for construction of the new foundry?
yes.
Objection, can you, point to the portion of your testimony you're referencing there?
Allow me to, one moment.
So we're in what, in direct testimony?
Your Honor, this is actually rebuttal WPL Olson 5. Getting at line 15.
That is what the pink line represents.
Thank you. On that pink line, there are two blue dots that per the key correspond to existing WPL meters services. Is that correct?
Correct.
Are those 2 meters also part of the temporary distribution facilities that were installed in November 2023?
Could you repeat that?
Let's read it back.
Question, are those 2 meters also part of the temporary distribution facilities that were installed in November 2023?
1 meter was installed at that point. A second meter is being installed at this time.
Could you approach the screen behind you, if you would? Using that image, could you point out for us the meter that was installed as part of the November 2023 installation?
The northern one.
Your Honor, may the record reflect that the witness has pointed to the northern of the 2 meter points on the pink line.
Okay.
And Ms. Wilson, if you could see what, could you point out to us if it's shown on this exhibit, the meter that is being installed or will be installed?
The second one.
Thank you. Your Honor, may the record reflect the witness has pointed to the southernmost of the 2 meter points on the pink line on the exhibit.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I may have misunderstood. The southernmost, is it currently being installed or soon to be installed?
Cable has been installed. I don't know if the meter has been installed.
Fair enough. The cable that has been installed, would it have been installed in November 2023 or since?
I don't know the exact timing of each piece of cable.
Do you have any reason to believe that that cable you're referring to for the future meter was installed prior to November 2023?
It would not have been installed prior to November 23.
Your Honor, if you could scroll a little further down in the exhibit.
To the key?
Yeah, that view is good enough, thank you. Ms. Olson, do you also see towards the bottom a black box, and inside the black box is the words, or are the words AYM substation?
Yes,
And there's also a pink WPL meter in AYM substation dot within that black box.
correct.
Does that substation currently exist?
No,
Does that meter currently exist?
no,
Is it expected that that will be the future location of the substation that will directly serve the AYM boundary?
it is the approximate location, yes.
Further to the left of the area labeled AYM substation, you see an additional blue dot that's corresponds to existing WPL meters services.
Are you referring to the dot that's right next to Old Highway Road?
Yes,
This one.
yes. Your Honor, the record reflect that the witnesses pointed to the, call it the southwesternmost.
Yes, I see that dot.
To be clear, that serves a Wisconsin Energy gas facility of some sort.
Correct.
And that gas facility is fenced off from the rest of that parcel, is that correct?
Objection, assuming facts not evidence.
Well, let's get those in.
That's the purpose of it.
So
I'm sorry.
overall, that's fine. I know there is a gas station in the area that's in the record, so just pinpointing its location is valid, so go ahead.
It's to your knowledge, is that gas facility fenced off from the rest of the parcel?
There is a fence around the gas facility.
If we could, Your Honor, scroll up in the exhibit. That's, thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Olson, does the exhibit Olson 1 depict the Timmerman residence?
Yes,
And would you mind going up to the board again, just pointing that out for us? Your Honor, the record reflect the witnesses pointing to the structure directly above the white arrow, below the white arrow is AYM. This is just east of Old Highway Road. And is it correct, Ms. Olson, that the structures directly east and northeast of that residence are some of the agricultural outbuildings you described in your rebuttal testimony?
yes,
There's a blue line emanating from the west side of Highway 151 toward Old Highway Road and ultimately reaching an area near one of those agricultural outbuildings. Do you see that blue line?
yes.
Your Honor, if you could scroll down to the key so that the witness can see that. Are you, Ms. Olson, you agree that per the key that represents an existing WPL distribution line
Yes,
and it ended with a blue dot, which was characterized as existing WPL meters services?
yes,
That blue dot, the meters or services were removed by power and light, correct?
Yes,
In fact, they were removed prior to you filing this exhibit, correct?
yes, that would be. I am not certain.
Your Honor, if we could scroll to the cover page of the exhibit. Ms. Olson, I represent to you that the document states it was received, it was April 5th of 2024. Do you see that?
April 5th, yes.
And so I guess with that context, is it incorrect that the power and light meter service was in fact removed prior to the filing of that exhibit?
Yes,
Additionally, at the time that exhibit was submitted, the residence was already demolished, correct?
yes,
And any of the remaining agricultural outbuildings were also demolished, correct?
yes,
Do you also see on the exhibit a yellow line following pretty close to Old Highway Road, roughly emanating from the Scenic Rivers distribution line along Highway 151 and following Old Highway Road?
yes,
And that represents a Scenic Rivers 950-foot underground distribution line, correct?
yes,
And you understand that to be the distribution line that has since been abandoned and de-energized?
that's my understanding.
And you'd agree that that line terminated on parcel 116-985?
Yes,
And the terminus shows a yellow dot, correct?
yes,
And you'd agree that per the key, that represents a new SREC meter pedestal, is that correct?
yes,
And you'd agree that that meter pedestal is in fact on 116-985?
yes,
And you understand that that meter pedestal has also since been removed from service?
it has.
Ms. Olson, can you identify for me anywhere else on that yellow line where there was an SREC meter pedestal or point of service?
None to my knowledge.
Do you contend that SREC ever used this line, this yellow line, to serve any structure on tax parcel 116-960, meaning the tax parcel to the north?
Not to my knowledge.
Do you contend that SREC used that line to provide service anywhere on tax parcel 46-960-10, that being the residence parcel?
Not to my knowledge.
Do you have any basis to contend that SREC used that line to serve anything on any parcel other than parcel 116-985?
Not to my knowledge.
When you say not your knowledge, is that the same as saying you don't have a basis to make that contention? Objection asked and answered.
No, she can clarify. Go ahead.
I'm not personally aware that any other meters had been set off of that line.
Thank you. Ms. Olson, exhibit WPL Olson 1 does not identify the location of the temporary job shack that receives service from SREC, correct?
Correct.
Did you or anyone on behalf of Wisconsin Power and Light measured the distance between SREC's three-phase distribution line and the temporary job shack that receives service from from SREC?
I did not.
Are you aware of anybody making that measurement on behalf of WPL?
I'm not aware that anybody made that measurement.
Did you or anyone on behalf of WPL measure the distance between the Timmerman residence and the job shack?
I did not measure the distance.
Are you aware of anyone making that measurement on behalf of WPL?
I'm not aware.
Did you or anyone on behalf of WPL measure the distance between the agricultural outbuildings while they were still standing and the job shack?
I did not make those measurements.
Are you aware of anyone making those measurements on behalf of WPL?
Not that I'm aware.
We could direct your attention to rebuttal WPL Goal 77. This will now direct your attention to line 5, where you state, while WPL cannot confirm the exact size of each building, based on our review of Google Maps imagery, you begin a description of various agricultural buildings. Do you see that portion of the testimony?
Yes,
So to be clear, your descriptions and characterizations of these agricultural buildings, is that based exclusively on your Google Maps imagery review?
yes.
And can you provide me with detail about what exactly you mean by a review of Google Maps imagery?
On the Google Maps imagery, there is a scale listed at the bottom of the page, and you can scale an approximate distance and approximate measurements.
Did you look at a single image, multiple images?
I scaled that off of one image.
Is that one of the images that's in the record currently?
I would have to look.
If you think.
I don't believe that Google Map image is included in any of the exhibits.
Is it fair to assume that that image was an overhead image as opposed to a street view, for example?
It was an overhead image.
Do you have straight that, what year was the image depicting?
I would have to review that image again to tell you the year.
Do you have a sense of the approximate year or time frame?
It would have been prior to 2023.
Did you ever personally go out to this property and visit those outbuildings?
I did not.
Have you ever seen images of the outbuildings other than the image you described on Google Maps and any other images that have been submitted to the record?
I have personally seen the buildings in driving by on Highway 151.
Is that just in passing or for purpose of of this case or?
In passing.
And how many of the buildings would have been visible to you from 151?
The house is clearly visible. The dairy barn that was the first building removed was clearly visible. And two of the buildings that have the white roofs as described had red and white siding, steel siding. They were visible from the road.
And those observations that you just described from the road, do they factor in at all in your description, in formulating your description, characterizations of the buildings in rebuttal, WPLs and so on?
My ability to see them from the road, is that your question?
My question is, did you rely upon what you may have seen in the past from Highway 151 in preparing this portion of your testimony?
Yes,
You referred to the dairy barn as the first to be removed. Do you recall when that was removed?
Objection, can you point to where in her testimony she said it was the first to be removed?
Your Honor, if we could have the record, read back from the record, she testified to it a couple moments ago.
Okay, give us the reason, sure.
Tell me what I'm looking for. You need like a search word. She said, first to be removed.
what
Let me.
page and line
This is
are we
the,
in?
let me see if this is the answer. The house is clearly visible. The dairy barn that was the first building removed was clearly visible. And you want me to keep reading? And two,
You're good, go ahead.
do you want me to keep reading?
That's
Okay.
the basis for the question.
And do you need the current question?
No, I was looking for the exhibit in the line that we were previously referencing. I wanted to go back to the page.
At the outset of the set of questions, okay. So we're starting with the description you provided at rebuttal, power and light, Olson 7. And my question that's pending was specific to something you just testified to live.
The very last question,
Yes.
Okay,
not what he just said, but you mean before that. Right?
Correct. Yeah.
Question, you referred to the dairy barn as the first to be removed. Do you recall when that was removed? Very correct.
Thank you.
I don't recall the year that it was removed. Again, from earlier views of Google Maps and looking at historical versions, there are versions that clearly show the dairy barn and the two silos at that location.
So to be clear, when you refer to Google Maps imagery, a review of Google Maps imagery, you testified earlier that you looked at a single image, correct?
To take those measurements.
Take the measurements. Did you rely on more than one image for your descriptions, your characterizations that are found at rebuttal WPL Olson 7?
Yes, I did.
Are those other images part of the record?
No,
Was the dairy barn still standing at any point in 2023?
No,
Was it still standing at any point in 2022?
Objection, I think this has been asked and answered. She said she doesn't know when it was demolished.
Your Honor,
So she can answer, that's, go ahead.
I don't know the year it was demolished.
presumably at some point prior to 2023, is that fair?
Yes,
You were never inside that dairy barn.
no,
In addition to a dairy barn, you identify a building as being a machine shed. That is your first description on line 9 of rebuttal 7. See that?
I'm sorry, rebuttal.
Olson 7.
Thank you.
yes.
And what is your basis for concluding that it was a machine shed in particular?
Objection, mischaracterizes her testimony.
Okay, well, I see on lines 8 and 9, that sentence of Olson, rebuttal Olson 7. It says the agricultural building just west of the residence include what appear to be a machine shed. Is that not the place we're at now?
Yes.
But I guess I was objecting to the wording of the question. She said what appears to be a machine shed. She didn't necessarily conclude that conclusively.
Okay.
I'll rephrase. Ms. Olson, what is your basis for the statement that one of these buildings appeared to be a machine shed?
The structure was a rectangular hole-style building with doors on it that would represent what you would normally see on an agricultural machine shed.
So in other words, it could have been a machine shed.
Correct,
It could have been used for some other purpose too, correct?
correct.
And you had never been inside what appeared to be a machine shed?
No,
You also identify what appeared to be a round roof barn. You see that portion of your testimony?
yes.
And what was your basis for concluding that it appeared to be a round roof barn?
The visual image on the Google map.
And had you ever been inside this particular round roof barn?
No,
And a round roof barn could be used for a variety of storage needs, correct?
correct,
Could house hay, for example,
correct,
feedstock,
correct,
equipment.
correct.
You go on to identify something that appears to be a white roof shed. You see that portion of the testimony?
Yes,
Is that based just on the appearance and measurements that you're able to derive from Google Images?
correct.
Have you ever been inside that white roof shed?
No,
Do you know if it was a 3-sided or a 4-sided shed, for example?
could you explain what you mean by a 3-sided or a 4-sided shed?
Sure. Well, we'll jump ahead to your testimony. You also referred to something that appears to be a loafing shed. You see that?
Yes,
And you understand a loafing shed is used primarily for horses or cattle to enter to get out of the elements, correct?
correct,
And a loafing shed would typically have 3 sides because that livestock needs a way to get in and out of the loading shed, correct?
Correct.
So if I said that is an example of a three-sided shed, we could agree on that?
Correct.
So my question is, as to the white roof shed, do you have, can you say whether or not the white roof shed had, for example, 3 sides or 4 sides?
No,
Going further into the testimony, you referred to a dairy barn with 2 silos. I take it that is the dairy barn we were talking about earlier in your testimony.
yes,
And were the silos, the 2 silos, were those also removed at the same time as the dairy barn?
in a Google image, they appeared with the barn. And then in subsequent images, it's all gone. Whether they were removed at exactly the same time, I don't know.
WPL's service to the Timmerman residents and agricultural outbuildings, that was all through a single service drop, correct?
The center yard pole, yes,
Center yard pole, there was a single meter.
a single meter,
None of those outbuildings, for example, had individual meters, correct?
correct.
They're correct that any billing associated with electric service to any agricultural outbuildings was billed to the residents, is that correct?
Built or build?
Billed, B-I-L-L-E-D.
Thank you.
There was one bill for the meter that was on that residence. And it was billed to the fire number that it was associated with that house. Yes,
And that was through the point in time that Power and Light closed the account and pulled out the facilities.
correct.
So Ms. Bolton, as you sit here today, you cannot say with certainty whether what you describe as appearing to be a machine shed actually had any electric load being served by power. Okay.
No,
The same is true for the grain bin, correct? Or I should say what appeared to have been a grain bin.
I cannot personally say I saw a service drop to a grain bin. It would have been incredibly difficult to operate a grain bin without power. And the source of power for that entire farmstead was the center yard pole.
But in other words, you don't know whether there was a line running from the center yard pole to what appeared to be a grain bin. Is that correct?
I have not seen that.
Did you see a line running from the center yard pole to what appeared to be a round roof barn?
I did not see the conductors.
Do you have any basis to conclude that there were in fact conductors between the center yard pole and the round roof barn?
I do not personally have reference to see those conductors between those points.
Do you have a basis to conclude that there were conductors between the center yard pole and the grain bin, acknowledging your earlier testimony that it would be difficult to operate the grain bin?
I have not seen conductors that would run between those 2 points.
Do you have any basis to conclude that there were conductors running from the center yard pole to what appeared to be a machine shed?
I have not seen conductors that run between those 2 points.
Do you have any basis to conclude that there were conductors running from the center yard pole to the dairy barn with the 2 silos?
I have not seen conductors that would run between those 2 points.
Do you have any basis to conclude that there were conductors between the 7-yard pole and what appeared to be a white roof shed?
I have not seen conductors between those 2 points.
And do you have any basis to conclude that there were conductors running between the 7-yard pole and the what appeared to be a loading shed?
I have not seen conductors running between those points.
Do you have any basis to believe that any of those agricultural buildings that we've just discussed were ever used as a residence for people?
The previously described agricultural buildings,
Yes.
I would not have evidence of that.
Do you have any basis to conclude that there was ever livestock actually housed in any of these agricultural outbuildings?
I don't have evidence to show that.
So Cindy, you currently work as customer service manager for the landfill and Petition customer operations, is that correct?
Correct.
Does WPL have a real estate department?
Yes.
Is the real estate department typically the department that handles easements, for example,
Yes.
including drafting easements that Power and Light may obtain from property owners,
Yes.
recording those easements,
Yes.
interpreting those easements?
Yes.
Do you work in the real estate department?
No.
Have you previously worked in the real estate department?
I worked in the real estate department. Yes.
When was that?
It was in January of 1999 to approximately October of 2008.
And in what capacity or capacities did you work in the real estate department?
I did for our sister company in Iowa, IPL, Interstate Power and Light, regulatory filings for transmission pipelines and transmission and electric transmission facilities.
When you say regulatory filings, what types of filings would that entail?
On the electric side, filed franchise permit applications with the Iowa Utilities Board. And on the gas side, the sister to that, pipeline permit applications to the Iowa Utilities Board.
Ms. Olson, are you a member of Scenic Rivers Energy Cooperative?
Yes, I am.
Have you attended their board of directors meetings?
No,
I'm gonna object. I think this is beyond the scope of any of her pre-filed testimony.
Well,
Can you
portions of
justify?
her pre-filed testimony refer to direction supposedly made by the board of directors of SREC. It also attributes motives to SREC.
Okay, I'll allow it.
Do you need the question repeated?
Your Honor, if Attorney Woodward is asking specific questions about her testimony, that would like to have you directed to that portion of it that he's referring to, so we can interpret the relevancy of his questions.
Your Honor, I'm sorry. Are we doing multiple attorney objections now?
Well, I think I'm hearing Attorney Ramirez is making a request of the bench, not arguing, but yes, that's usually our practice is to cite the testimony if you're using that as the basis of a question. However, I think this background question is valid. I'll have her answer.
Thank you.
Let's just make sure we keep those questions within the bounds of the case. And should we read back, that pending question now?
Hmm. The very last question was, have you attended their board of directors meetings? Answer no. Want me to go back with it now?
No, I believe that that's the last question.
Okay.
My understanding is that stands.
That
Yes,
was the last question.
that's fine.
Have you ever worked for SREC?
No,
I'd like to direct your attention to Sir Rebuttal Olson 10, line 12. Testimony regarding a new distribution line that Power Line might build. Do you see that portion of your testimony?
yes,
You note, well, first, my understanding is that this new distribution line will follow the right of way to the new road that's being constructed. Do you see that portion of the testimony?
yes.
When you refer to the right of way for the new road, what does that mean to you when you use right of way?
The public road right away that's associated with a public road.
Does that include something beyond the paved area?
It does.
And do you have any understanding of what that means?
Objection made.
I'll rephrase. Do you have any understanding of where the right of way extends beyond a paved road?
Roads will vary, but when a road is established, there is a width, a total width of the road right of way, part of which is paved, and part of it is considered to be the untraveled portion of the road. And that is used commonly for utility installation, including water, sewer, communication, electric, gas.
And have you made any attempt to determine whether any of the SREC facilities that are described in Power and Light's petition and complaint are in road right of way as you just described?
Could you repeat that?
Read it back.
Question, and have you made any attempt to determine whether any of the SREC facilities that are described in Power and Light's petition and complaint are in road right of way as you just described?
Yes, we have made an attempt.
The road that you're referring to in that portion of your testimony, the new road, has that road been constructed up to this point?
It's partially constructed.
Does it generally follow the outline of the road that I believe appears in Olson 2?
That's the foundation.
I can ask you an additional question. So how do you know that the road is partially constructed?
You can see it from Highway 151.
Do you have some sense of where that partially constructed road is located?
In general terms,
And the exhibit that's on the screen, I believe, Your Honor, was that Olson one?
It's in two, I guess. Yeah.
That portion that you have been able to see of the partially constructed road, does it appear to correspond roughly with any the outline of the proposed road or proposed street on that exhibit?
I'm just gonna object foundation again, and she's seen the road in person. I don't know that she has the qualifications to answer this question.
Whether it's her exhibit that she's offered, she's seen the road, I'm just asking if it appears to her that what she's seen matches any portion of what's depicted in her exhibit.
Okay, well, I guess why don't we, in terms of getting foundation, why don't we ask the witness to what extent the witness has driven through this area in order to identify what you're asking. At this point, I think witness said she's seen part of the road, but let's just get more foundation about what she did when she was looking at the road, how that occurred.
Ms. Olson, have you traveled on Highway 151 in the area depicted in the exhibit?
Yes,
Have you done so recently?
yes,
And have you also traveled on, say, Old Highway Road in the area depicted in this exhibit?
I have not traveled Old Highway Road in months.
So have you traveled Highway 151 in this area more recently than you have Old Highway Road?
Correct.
While traveling Highway 151, you're able to see some portion of partially constructed new road, is that correct?
There's been a lot of soil moved, soil excavation. There is nothing visible showing pavement of a road. It's preliminary grading that has been done.
And what you've observed of that preliminary grading, what portion, using the exhibit to explain what portion is it that you've seen?
You can generally see the portion that is somewhat parallel to Highway 151.
Is that the portion closest to Highway 151?
Correct.
And that emanates from the area north of Old Highway Road, is that correct?
Correct.
And what you've observed, does that appear to match the approximate location of that portion of the proposed road as depicted in the exhibit in front of you?
There's excavation activities there. I'm not a builder or contractor. To the best of my knowledge, that appears to be what they're excavating is a roadbed.
And that roadbed emanates from Old Highway Road heading north parallel to 151, is that fair?
Yes,
I wouldn't expect you to say with specificity that it's the exact locations that are marked necessarily. No other questions, thank you.
All right. So, does commission staff have any questions?
No questions.
Can you redirect?
Just some limited research.
No.
Ms. Olson, you were asked some questions about the location of WPL distribution facilities on the premises, if you recall that line of questioning.
yes,
and specifically about WPL's service drop and meter to the premises. You recall that question?
Yes.
Can you clarify for the record which tax parcel number the old WPL meter was located on?
The meter was located on tax parcel 958. Excuse me, 960. When we're looking 116,960.
Thank you. And is that the same parcel on which the service drop was located?
Yes.
I'm gonna refer you back to your rebuttal testimony. Page 8, starting on line 1. You recall that you were asked questions about WPL service to the various agricultural outbuildings located on the premises. You recall that?
Yes.
And there were specifically questions about whether there were conductors from WPL service drop to the agricultural outbuildings. You recall that?
Yes.
Okay. I guess just starting on line 9, you indicated that one of those buildings was what appears to be a machine shed, right?
Yes.
And do you think a machine shed could be operated without electrical power?
Objection calls for speculation and requesting it was appeared to be a machine shed, not that it was a machine shed.
Right. Yeah, I think, well, do you have any response?
I mean, I would just, the question was phrased that it appears to be a machine shed. I'm asking her, in her experience, in her understanding, a machine shed generally can be operated without electrical power.
Yeah, I'm
Go
gonna
ahead.
sustain the objection because we really haven't established if it's a machine shed or not, so. Yeah. Any objection?
Ms. Olson, in your experience as a customer service manager, do you have occasion to work with, WPL's agricultural customers?
Yes.
Are you generally familiar with the service requirements for agricultural customers?
Yes.
In your experience, what are the typical service requirements for a farm such as the one at issue here?
Objection, Your Honor, irrelevant and also lacking foundation. There's been no testimony indicating that there is a quote unquote single typical farm, let alone that this farm is somehow representative of the typical farm. If they wanted to do some sort of bill analysis, I suppose they could have done that. That's not in the record in this case.
Okay. Well, I mean, if you want to ask her if typically a machine shed gets service, I'm gonna, and presumably the co-op's gonna object, I'm gonna sustain an objection, so that's where you're going.
Understood.
Okay.
You were also asked some questions about how you conducted the measurements for the various buildings that were previously located on the premises? You remember that?
Yes,
And there was some question about whether you had used a single image or multiple images. Do you remember that?
yes.
Can you just explain the, and I believe you said that you had used multiple aerial images from Google Maps, correct?
Correct.
Can you just explain what those multiple images were?
In Google Maps, there are historical versions of the maps. And through one version had a clear picture of the farm buildings with a scale. And you're able to scale the approximate size and relationship of those buildings to each other.
Yeah. So again, just referring back to these agricultural outbuildings, I think there was, you had stated in cross-examination that you've seen or had seen those buildings from US Highway 151, correct?
Correct.
Have you also had occasion to drive down Old Highway Road?
I have.
At any point in time, driving down Old Highway Road, did you have occasion to look at the agricultural outbuildings on the premises?
You could see the buildings from highway or from Old Highway Road.
Okay. Turning back to the location of WPL service drop and meter. And I guess if we can, I'll refer you to your exhibit 1. So I believe you had said the service drop and meter were located on parcel 116960, correct?
Correct.
If that, and that service drop was used, what was that service drop used to serve?
That service drop served all of the buildings that had power on that farmstead.
If the, so the service drop didn't just serve the residents, correct?
Objection. Foundation mischaracterizes the earlier testimony where she clearly stated she had no basis to conclude that there were any conductors running from the pole in the center yard to any of the agricultural buildings.
I think that's actually mischaracterizing her prior testimony. She stated repeatedly that it's been used to serve both the ag outbuildings and the residents. And I'm trying to clarify that point.
So let's ask what's the basis for that statement?
So, Ms. Olson, can you explain the basis for your statement that the service drop was used to serve the residents and agricultural outbuildings?
The reason that you would have a center yard pole distribution point that was like on this farm is for the sole purpose of serving multiple structures at a location. If we were serving just the house, you would have a service line and a meter on the house.
Um. I don't think I have any further questions.
All right. Okay, great. Anything else?
Yeah. Follow up on the last points.
Typically not. Is it something brief?
Yes, would simply be asking, can the witness place a number of all of the outbuildings she's identified? Can she identify a number of those that would have received service from the center?
If you want to ask that, sure.
Can you identify any number of the outbuildings that receive service from the pole?
No,
Good. All right. Thanks, sir. Excuse. We have one more witness. I think if we just take a 5-minute recess, I just want to fix something here on the system. But just sit tight or just break for about 5 minutes. Sure. Any longer, we'll continue it out.
Into the microphone up to speaker.
This is so jerry-rigged at this point. It's amazing. But we got it done. We got it done, so.
Is it just not showing everything, Mike?
Well, it's only using, they're supposed to be connected,
Oh,
and it works really well when it works, but it's only using the far one now. Okay, so when parties are speaking, it shows like the whole room, and this
Oh.
should be working so well. You should be like right up to the screen, and it's annoying that it.
Oh, because it's an owl.
It's in here. This is why it was so hard to buy this for state procurement. I was like, you want to buy an owl? It's like, what, are you kidding me? It's like, they could have just made it sound a little more professional and it would have been easier to sell, but.
It's funny, one of our daughters is like 19 or 20 months.
Yeah. Oh,
And what owl is one of the words that she says,
Oh,
and she says it all the time.
that's.
You see the bird owl, owl.
That's
Oh, all right.
probably
Yeah, I was a
trying to
favorite with my daughter too, so it's.
buy some endangered species or something.
Yeah, right. DNR got involved. They're like, the PSC cannot own owls.
We're
No.
gonna, yeah, land us federal charges here. Yeah.
Problem, like, they don't make me use this. I'm gonna take the.
Have you ever been in a courtroom where we've seen it actually used?
No.
The gavel?
Yeah. Have you experienced an use of gavel?
Do you see that? That's the one time I've ever used it here. It's in the wood. I'm surprised.
Like back when I was a new reporter in the late 80s.
Sure.
I was gonna say, I feel like it's probably something that was more of a historic practice that.
Well, thanks.
Well, the bailiff would be nice too, but you know, I can't ask for everything.
No, they used to. Couple judges, but they were older judges.
Hmm.
Probably my age now, but I was a kid back then.
Even some of the things like the pomp and circumstance of like the robes and stuff, it seems like
Yes.
it's
Right.
no longer.
Yeah, unzipped or just sometimes not even.
Yeah.
Really?
bothering with it, yeah.
I love a robe. I could wear anything in there. Still not working.
Jesus Christ.
Right, that's all it's doing right
I was gonna
now.
say, it does sound like an owl.
The all-seeing owl, right?
Yes.
You see the big back blue screen up there?
You know, I haven't been,
Oh, I thought you were looking at the screen. It's not big because my font is smaller than it is at home. That's the key. Need to move something?
no, it's really not working.
To magnify.
Okay.
It's easier to hear. And it sounds, it sounds like you're typing in my ear. No, I'm like, what is that noise? And then I look over and you guys are both typing.
I can turn this off, actually.
No, it's okay. It's just, it's. Like I had this thing on Saturday is all I'll call it, because I don't know what to call it. It wasn't a deposition, it wasn't here. There was this going on and I couldn't see anybody. Everybody was right in front of me and I'm like, what is that? And then all of a sudden I see one guy kind of going like this and he was under the table. And I'm like,
I was not like that. I was.
no, but I had this in because it was a big, long table and
Yeah.
it was like they were right in my ear. I mean, that's what that black thing and the little one, they're magnifiers.
And are they connected to these or just? sort of
No,
sound generally?
But just like somebody over, these guys were, and it was like, I couldn't make it out, but I could hear, And then when you take it out, you can't hear it, but man, this thing, I'm like,
I will.
no, don't change anything you're doing. I just thought it was funny, because I was like, what is that noise? And I didn't notice it before then.
I would like quieter keys.
No,
I've actually asked for, I think they're quiet, but I'm still.
they're quiet, but when they're being magnified,
Yeah.
like if you come over and listen to this, like somebody way back in the corner can say hello and you'll hear it right as day. Don't anybody like. What's that right there? But I've taken it out before when I've done public sessions and somebody's talking really loudly because they're very passionate and they get right there and I'm like, whoa. They were the ones in the vans in front of me coming in, driving really slowly up the ramp. I'm like, "Oh, come on."
They were to drive like 2 weeks ago.
Well, no, but I'm just like, it's a parking ramp, we have to, we're not looking for a place, they told us to go to 7, just go to 7.
Oh, I know,
No, there was a guy, and we pulled up, gotta go to 7.
must have got the last one.
Probably, I've never not been able, I've never. not-
You're the one, everybody.
So my fault.
I'm sure they were all convinced of this.
Well, by their age and the way they were, I'm like, they don't look like public service. They don't look like they were much out of high school.
Are they in high school or is that a high school?
Yeah, I
thing?
think it's,
Visual, I think, yeah.
Oh, it is, okay.
High school brand. It's like state championship. It's interesting they use this building.
Right,
Yeah.
I was in school for a hearing. On my birthday, so the end of April. I was on the other side. You know, I mean, I've only ever been here and gone to the bathroom over here. I have it going. So I went over there and I go in the bathroom and this guy in there, I'm like, oh my God, it's the wrong one. Because the reverse on the other side. Who's the attorney I was working? But then he described to me what he did years ago, same thing. But he was in there and then all these ladies came in and he realized he was in the wrong one. He reversed something. It's like a new image.
Yeah, that set is kind of the this thing.
It's weird.
All right, fun's over.
Oh, I was doing the entertainment.
I know, I need you. You juggle?
There's an important question, is it working?
No, I mean, it's working, but it's not
So
the
is
way,
that the Zoom?
it's not the way it's supposed to be. I have a call out to our tech person, so we'll see.
But is that the Zoom that's not working?
It's these two devices aren't communicating, so it's not as good as it should be, but we
There was a
can.
reason I.
We'll plug them. Yes, well, yeah, I think you, but yeah, okay. So let's move on to our next witness.
Wisconsin Power and Light Company calls, Mr. Troy Pitts to the stand.
Swear you in? Swear or affirm, tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Have a seat.
And keep the microphone up too closer.
Yeah, actually, the angle it. All right,
Good afternoon, Mr. Pitts.
Good afternoon.
Did you file or cause to be filed direct testimony and 3 exhibits in this proceeding?
Yes,
And is that testimony and are those exhibits true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
yes,
If I asked you the same questions in your pre-filed written testimony today, would your answers be the same?
yes.
Witnesses available for cross.
okay, so I just wanted to check, was any errata, connected to the Pitts testimony? Yeah, okay, so with the errata, we can accept, the Pitts testimony exhibits for the record. And any questions?
Good afternoon, Mr. Pitts.
Good afternoon.
Hi, I'm gonna start by referring to your pre-filed direct.
So just introduce yourself.
Oh, I apologize. I'm Attorney Sarah Bai for SRDC. And I have some questions for you about your pre-filed direct testimony. I'm gonna start on direct WPL page 9. Beginning at line 15 in the middle. There is a description. WPL's, so the description is 12.5 kilovolt distribution line that runs along the west side of US Highway 151 and Old Highway Road. Did I read that correctly?
I'm sorry, where are you exactly? What page?
Line 15 on page 9.
Oh.
Begins in the middle of the line.
Yes,
And if we pull up WPL Olson 1. On the left west side of the highway there, is that dark purple line that you were describing or sort of dark blue? I might need to scroll up a bit. Yeah.
it's the dark blue,
Dark blue? On the west side of the highway?
Highway 151,
Yes.
correct.
Oh, right, there's also Old Highway, which is confusing. Okay, so now, going back to your direct same page, I'm now at footnote 11. And it reads, this is the same line from which WPL provided single-phase electric service through a service drop that connected to the residents and agricultural outbuildings that were previously located on the premises. As noted earlier, that service drop was removed from the premises to accommodate ongoing construction activities at the request of the landowner at the time. Did I read that about right?
Yes,
Okay. And to confirm, the location of that service drop was not on parcel 116,958-0000, what we're calling the northernmost parcel, is that right?
Can you repeat that again,
Sure.
please?
That service drop, and we discussed it earlier, but that service drop is not on the northernmost parcel of what we are calling WPL premises, is that correct?
Of 958, you're saying?
Yes.
Correct.
And apologies for going out of order, but zooming back out on the same page to line 10, we're still on direct WPL pits 9, starting with the phrase the northernmost parcel. So the northernmost parcel, that's tax parcel ID number 116-00958-0000, is currently owned by J&C. Is that referring to J&C Realty?
Correct.
After that, in that same paragraph, you outline the first option of how you would be able to provide three-phase commercial service to that northernmost parcel if needed. Is that correct?
Correct.
The first of those ways is how WPL could provide three-phase electrical service to the new warehouses being constructed in this area from its 12.5 kilovolt distribution line, which is the line we discussed earlier to the west of Highway 151.
Correct.
And could you read that sentence that starts at the end of line 16 with WPL on that same page?
WP&L could serve the warehouses by boring a new line from its 12.5 kV distribution line on the west side of US Highway 151, underneath the highway and onto the premises.
Thank you, sir. SREC's distribution line is to the east of the highway, is that correct?
Yes.
In other words, if WPL were to bore under the highway to serve a structure on that northernmost parcel, WPL would have to cross Scenic River's three-phase line to the east of the highway underneath this plan?
Correct.
And it's true that neither SREC nor WPL has ever served any structure at all on that northernmost parcel.
Objection. I think that misstates the testimony that's on the record.
Okay,
I'll rephrase, has WPL ever served any structure on that northernmost parcel?
We have on that premises that parcel is part of.
So to be clear, WPL has never served any structure on tax parcel ID 116-00958-0000.
Not to my knowledge.
Now, about these warehouses that have been proposed for the northernmost parcel, and I believe you discussed those on page 8 of your testimony, in an answer beginning at line 13. 113? 13, yes. Okay, got it. About those warehouses discussed in that portion of your testimony, you don't have any information about the types of structures those warehouses would be, do you?
No.
Okay. You don't know whether they need electric service.
Pardon me?
You don't know whether they need to be energized.
I can't say for certain, but normally
Okay.
they would be.
You go on further down in that same paragraph to mention a new road and WPL's plans for a future new line along that road as an alternative to this plan. Oh, I apologize. I skipped back to a different page. My apologies for that. Returning to page 9 of your testimony. Beginning at line 19. So you go on further down in that same paragraph to mention a new road and WPL's plans for a future new line along that road as an alternative to this plan to bore under the highway. Is that a correct summary?
Yes,
And this future line WPL plans to build does not exist right now?
correct.
Now, again, I'm skipping back and forth between pages, but on direct WPL pin 8, going back one more page, starting roughly at line 14. Says there are currently plans to redevelop the premises from agricultural to other uses. The development plan shows the construction of an additional building associated with the AYM foundry, as well as several warehouses on the northern portion of the premises. Is that right? Did I read that right?
Yes,
Okay, so you're discussing an additional building associated with the AY McDonald foundry to the south. Is that a correct summary?
correct.
In other words, the foundry and then an additional southern building southern?
Objection, it's, I think, question made.
Okay.
You want to rephrase?
Yeah. Yes, I will rephrase. One second.
Didn't want to stop the flow. I think we're doing well.
The line is that, so again, at line 14, the development plan shows construction of an additional building associated with the AYM foundry. Do you understand that building to be a separate building also on that southernmost parcel that is outside of the premises?
Yes, it'd be on the southern end of the premises, 960.
WPL's service agreement with AY McDonald is for service to the foundry building, is that correct?
Correct,
Not that second other building on that southern parcel.
correct.
I have no further questions, Jen.
All right. So are we at redirect?
Yeah, just a couple follow-ups, on that last line of question regarding the service agreement. AYM has requested that WPL provide electric service to the foundry, correct?
Correct.
Could AYM still request that WPL provide service to the new building that will be located on parcel 960?
Yes,
Would they need to submit a new service application to do that?
there's a couple ways they could do it. They could serve that new building out of their existing foundry that they're building. They have their own substation there, so they could feed it out of that foundry, or they could have asked WP&L to serve it off our distribution lines.
Right, but have you been dealing with AYM in terms of setting up service for the foundry?
Yes,
Would AYM need to submit a separate service application to serve that additional building?
not necessarily.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Okay. Nothing further?
Nothing further.
All right, thanks, you're excused.
Thank you.
Right, should we push on through our last witness? All right, let's do it. So SREC, you can call your witness, please.
Your Honor, SREC call Jason Knapp.
Do you swear or affirm, tell the truth, the whole truth, but the truth?
I do.
See,
Please state your name for the record
Jason Knapp,
and what is your occupation?
Director of Operations at SREC.
Are you the same Jason Knapp who prepared and caused to be filed direct SREC Knapp, rebuttal SREC Knapp, surrebuttal SREC Knapp, and exhibit SREC Knapp 1 through exhibit SREC Knapp 6?
Yes, I am.
I have a 7 too, so I missed it.
Sorry, man, I misspoke. I said SREC, through SREC 6, I intended to say through SREC 7.
Yes, I am.
And if you were asked, I'm sorry, strike that, is that testimony in the exhibits true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, it is.
If you were asked the questions in the pre-filed testimony today, would you give the same answers?
Yes, I would.
Your Honor, I do have one brief, line of questioning to follow up.
Okay, I just want to say that I can accept the documents filed for the record and go ahead with your supplemental testimony.
You're at, I'm sorry, Mr. Knapp, at surrebuttal WPL Olson 8. At line 17. Says, quote, WPL is requesting that the commission order SREC to remove the 2-meter pedestals it installed along US Highway 151, northwest of the residence and agricultural buildings that WPL previously served. The new distribution pole that SREC installed to provide temporary service to the job shack that was previously located on the premises, and the approximately 950-foot underground line that SREC installed along Old Highway Road. Mr. Knapp, the new distribution pole that Ms. Olson is referring to, what is the status of that pole?
Now that pole is just part of the distribution system. It's just a 3-phase tangent pole that serves nothing more than just, it's part of our 3-phase line now.
Meaning SREC's 3-phase line?
That is correct.
Does that mean is it's being used in relationship to the conductors in any way?
Yeah, it's holding up the conductors. It sits next to our regulator bank that we have right there. So.
You explain for me the status of the approximately 950-foot underground line.
It is in a de-energized state. It was, cut off below ground at both ends of the wire, and abandoned.
If today SREC wanted to utilize that line, provide service, put it as that line exists today?
We'd have to dig it up and splice it. The problem is the line has been there exposed to the elements underground. There's no, it's not heat shrinked on either end to keep water from getting in the cable. So it's not a common practice that we would use. No, if we had to, we'd put a new piece of wire in.
Nothing further.
All right. Questions for the witness?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mr. Knapp.
Good afternoon.
My name is David Zappo. I'm an attorney for WPL. I just have a couple questions for you. I want to go first to your rebuttal testimony. I don't know if you have it with you up there. Page 5, line 21 through 22, and you should let me know when you're there.
Yeah, it'll just take me a minute. I didn't have a nice book like that. I'm sorry, page 5, you said?
Yes, page 5, lines 21 and 22. Where you note that SREC is also likely within 500 feet of the proposed building south of the warehouses, correct?
Okay, correct.
And if we turn to Olson Exhibit 2 on the screen. Okay, so just to clarify, the proposed building south of the warehouses you're referring to in your rebuttal testimony, is that future building there?
That is correct.
Okay. Have you conducted any measurements to determine whether SREC would be located within 500 feet of that building?
All we did was conduct measurements based on what that is. I believe there was we had a picture of it showing a radius of 500 feet from our line, and it clipped the edge of that building.
Okay. I want to turn to your direct testimony. Page 6. So lines 19 through 21, you say the AY manufacturing proposed casting facility is a large, energy-intensive boundary that will require construction of a dedicated transmission line and substation. You see that?
Yep, I do.
And Scenic Rivers was involved with discussions with AYM about serving the new boundary, correct?
That is correct.
Scenic Rivers provided, I'll say AYM, with information about its electric rates, correct?
That is correct.
But AYM did not submit a service application for Scenic Rivers to provide electric service to the boundary, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Going back to your rebuttal testimony, I'm on page 6. I apologize for all the back and forth. Lines 2 to 3 on page 6, you state that the underground distribution line SREC installed on the east side of Old Highway Road, quote, was installed to serve a meter pedestal on land south of what WPL defines as, quote, the premises, unquote, correct?
That's correct.
And Scenic Rivers also installed a transformer at the end of that line, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And just in this quote, the land, quote, south of what WPL defines as, quote, the premises, unquote, is tax parcel ID 116-00985.
That is correct.
And that's the land upon which the new AYM foundry will be built, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And Scenic Rivers installed the underground line, the associated meter pedestal, and the transformer in May of 23, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. I'm now going to refer you to, if we can bring up Olson Exhibit 8. Apologize, I may have the wrong exhibit number.
Add it up so quickly.
Just a moment. I apologize, Your Honor. I believe it's Olson Exhibit 10.
Now it's gonna break.
Yeah. And it's the last page of that. Yep, that's the one.
It's gonna,
Okay, so. There we go. So. This, the caption for this picture says it depicts the Scenic Rivers transformer and meter installed at the terminus of Scenic's approximately 950-foot underground distribution line. Do you have any reason to dispute that representation?
No, I don't.
Okay. And just looking at the photograph, does it appear that construction activities had started in the area around the premises?
No, it doesn't.
And you said before that Scenic's installation of the underground line was made at the request of the property owner, right?
That is correct.
And at that time, that property owner was J&C Realty.
That is correct.
And J&C Realty also granted an easement for Scenic Rivers to install that underground line.
They gave us an easement to install the underground line, correct?
Okay. And you installed that underground line across both the premises and, excuse me, I'll rephrase. Scenic Rivers installed that underground distribution line on both the boundary property and the land directly north, correct?
The line is installed in the road right away.
Okay,
The transformer and meter set on the property, but the line itself is in the road right away.
okay, okay. And at this point, you remove the transformer and meter pedestal.
That is correct.
Okay. But I think you just stated that the underground line is still in place.
The underground line is still in place, but de-energized and abandoned.
Okay. Did you have any conversations with J&C Realty about the installation of these facilities?
Yes, we had a conversation with J&C Realty about where to place them.
Okay. Did J&C Realty indicate why it wanted those facilities installed?
Objection to the extent it calls for hearsay.
Overruled.
They wanted the meter pedestals placed for potential job shack trailers, is all we know.
Do you know what the job shacks were gonna be used for?
We didn't know.
So you stated that the underground distribution line, the meter and the transformer, excuse me, scratch that just a moment. I guess, were you planning to use the underground distribution line, transformer and meter along Old Highway Road to serve the construction site of the new boundary?
Objection, asked and answered, testified he didn't know what jobs they were gonna use for job shacks and didn't know what the job shacks were gonna be used for.
And I'm asking if he has an understanding of whether they were gonna be used for construction of the new boundary.
I'll allow it.
We didn't know. We didn't know if it was going to or not.
Could Scenic Rivers have used the underground distribution line that it installed along Old Highway Road to provide service to a building on tax parcel 116-960, just north of the boundary?
Objection, relevance, the possibility of serving other parcels is a hypothetical that really has no bearing on the issues in the case.
It's
Also calls for speculation.
It's directly, I mean, I'm asking him whether they could have used that line to serve a building that would have been built on the premises that is subject to this dispute. I don't know how it gets more relevant than that.
Overall,
We could have. So the line, the 950-foot line, you wanna know if we could have used it to serve the parcel to the north?
To the north of the boundary, correct, yes.
Yeah, it could have been used to serve that too.
Okay. Okay, all right. I'll turn to your SIR rebuttal testimony now. Page 4. Lines 6 to 7. I'll just give you a minute to read those. I guess lines 5 to 7. Where you're discussing J&C Realty's service application to Scenic Rivers. And you note that Scenic Rivers installed meter pedestals in quote vacant fields that were some half-mile apart, right?
Correct.
And we already talked about the 1 meter pedestal at the end of the underground line, but Scenic had another 2 meter pedestals installed in May of 23 on the east side of US Highway 151.
That's correct.
And those meters were also installed at the request of J&C Realty, correct?
That is correct.
And at the time those meters were installed in May of 2023, to your knowledge, was there any construction activity going on in the area?
There was nothing.
So when Scenic receives an application, a service application for a new building or facility, at what point in time does it typically install new metering infrastructure, if you know?
Objection. Sure what if there is typical practice, what that typical practice, how that is relevant again to the issues of whether Power and Light has an exclusive right to serve, whether Scenic Rivers installed facilities on a premises that was already being served, and whether any facility should be ordered removed.
I'm sorry, whether any,
Facility should be ordered removed.
thank you.
And again, Your Honor, I think this is clearly relevant, to the extent that Scenic does have a practice as to the time when it installs these facilities. And, you know, whether it adhered to that practice is, you know, relevant to the issues here.
okay, overruled.
Can you repeat the question?
Let's read it back.
Question, so when Scenic receives a service application for a new building or facility, at what point in time does it typically install new metering infrastructure, if you know?
It all depends. There's no set time of when they receive the meter. Depends on when the meter socket's set. It depends on how big of a job it is. So I can't give you a time.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Knapp, I want to sort of switch gears here a little bit and ask you, are you generally familiar with the charges that Scenic Rivers assesses against its customers?
Objection, relevance, as to what charges, again, have any relationship to the issues in this case.
There's a service application in the record that describes various charges that could be assessed against J&C Realty. I think it's, relevant from that perspective, and I'm also just trying to lay, some foundation here, to get into additional issues that I think are, again, clearly relevant to which utility has the right to serve in this area.
Your Honor, if I may, the application that Power and Light put into the record, they put it in for the purpose of testimony, claiming that SREC has treated some portion of the premises or the premises as a single premises. Its rate structure and rates or charges, to be more precise, charges that could be charged to a customer, a member, that has no relationship to the thing that the exhibit was offered for, the purpose of that being how Power and Light believes SREC treats a series of contiguous parcels. So again, this is going so far afield, talk about individual charges, to the extent it's relevant to the extent any sort of costs are relevant to the analysis. I know in the Amps Marquette case, we're talking about costs to customers as a whole, not individual costs or charges to an individual customer. So,
Any response?
Yeah, just briefly, I mean, you know, this case isn't just about who's gonna have the right to serve in the future. This is also a complaint. We're contending that Scenic illegally extended facilities onto a premises that we were actively serving. And whether or to what extent Scenic was assessing charges against one of its customers for service on that property is, I mean, it's just obviously, I think it's obviously relevant here.
all right, I would respectfully disagree and note that the facts of where were facilities installed, what was going on that parcel or parcels, how was it being used, what were the electric service needs, what was the electric service history, those things are all clearly relevant. Charges that could be assessed against a member at some point in the future has no relationship to that question of was there an illegal extension of service violating the anti-duplication statute. That's entirely separate, you know, field of inquiry.
Does staff have anything to add to this?
No, Your Honor, I'm not gonna take a position.
Yeah, okay. So complaint is where you're anchoring the relevance of the questions regarding charges, or is this, or maybe you're not asking about charges, maybe there's some other way to ask this question if that's what you're interested in, so.
Yes, Your Honor, I mean, I think, you know, it's ultimately the question of whether and what kind of service Scenic Rivers was providing. I mean, if there were charges being applied to a customer on a premises that we're serving, I think that's absolutely relevant to the complaint aspect of this proceeding. And I also frankly think it's relevant to, you know, it's a factor that the commission can and should consider when looking at whether this is a single premises.
Your Honor, I would note the anti-duplication statute speaks of facilities, it doesn't speak of charges. Not aware of the case law going into inquiry about charges. There's some inquiry about the costs, you know, to the public of installing facilities and how that might have bearing on the analysis of facts under the anti-duplication statute. Furthermore, Power and Light is asking questions about charges that would have been or would be assessed to J&C Realty, and there's absolutely no evidence that J&C Realty was ever a customer of Power and Light.
Your Honor.
So I guess I'm curious as to the complaint aspect of the case. So I know I'm looking at the petition for declaratory ruling and complaint. And so clearly citing the anti-duplication statute and the declaratory ruling statute, but also the complaint statute, 196.30. So to what extent has, and if Aaron Light can elaborate, looking at the petition, what is the separate claim of that's being complained of along the lines that would make charges relevant?
May I answer your question?
Yes, so,
Okay, so the anti-duplication statute, before getting into a primary extension, prohibits rendering service. That's the term that it uses. Throughout Mr. Knapp's testimony, he indicates that they were not in violation of the anti-duplication statute. And the basis for his claim is that the facilities, particularly these two meters, were not energized. Scenic Rivers, in the exhibits we provided, charges generally, and that's what we're going to for our question, charges customers a fixed fee. It says that that fixed fee applies regardless of the energy used. Therefore, we're getting to the question of whether or not Scenic Rivers was charging the customer for the benefit of having a meter on a premises we were serving.
any response?
Your Honor, again, reiterate previous objections. If you look at paragraph 17, the requested relief, outright light. None of those issues or the legal analysis that's necessary to reach a conclusion on those three issues in any way encompasses charges to an individual customer.
And respond, Your Honor.
And Your Honor, furthermore,
Go ahead. No, all right.
Were you asking me to respond, Your Honor, or Elaine?
Yeah, I'll hear it. Go ahead.
The question is, Mr. Waywood is construing this very narrowly in terms of charges. WPL would like to ask Mr. Knapp questions about service. Mr. Knapp's previous testimony construed service as only related to energized activities and facilities. That conflicts with the documentation we submitted, which indicates that service includes not just energy, but also a fixed charge that encompasses the service of having a meter placed on a parcel.
Your Honor, if I could.
Go ahead.
Where Mr. Ramirez refers to Mr. Knapp's testimony regarding energization of these meters, can we have a reference to the location of that testimony so we all are on the same page?
Yeah, that's fair.
May I have a moment?
Yes, go ahead.
Very safe.
So off the record. We're off the record. Okay, try one more. I give you one.
Yeah, finally figure it out. Yeah,
It's gonna be over on it. You knew what was happening this
I didn't.
time. Why did they make it?
Your Honor, with more time, I can provide more. I would first.
Are we?
Yeah, let's get back on the record. Go ahead.
So I refer Your Honor to rebuttal SREC map 6, lines 14 and 15. SREC was not providing service to any structure on the premises that WPL previously served.
Or anything else in that line that you're referring to is that the extent?
This would be, I think, Your Honor, that this statement alone illustrates my point. Mr. Knapp testified that his position in Scenic is that they were not providing service to any structure. And what appears to be implied in that, and our contention is, and if we're allowed to do it, to ask Mr. Knapp about the service of providing a meter, whether energized or not, and whether they charge for that. And secondarily, what he's indicating here is any structure. So the purpose of cross is to resolve ambiguity and previously filed testimony. Mr. Knapp presents the record with some ambiguity, whether or not they were providing service or if it's just very narrowly tailored to no service to a structure.
Your Honor, if I may, this is taken a completely different turn from how counsel characterized the testimony earlier, attributing to Mr. Knapp claims about there not being service based on whether or not meters were energized. That has not been pointed out anywhere in the record. What has been pointed out is not ambiguous testimony. And furthermore, it's pretty clear in the record, based on his earlier testimony, that there literally are no structures that were connected to those meter points because they could have been connected potentially to job shacks for some purpose in the future. And that's the extent of it.
Yeah. So I'm still hung up so I'm generally sympathetic to the co-op on this, except that I need to see, I think we need to parse out, the petition and complaint again. I think I want to keep this case as close to the petition as we can, because that's what initiated us here. The complaint, like I said, invokes 19630.
196.30.
19630, yeah. But I don't really see any separate claim outside of the duplication statute being expressed in the petition, except for the statement on page 5 of the petition, that sub 2, finding that SREC has illegally extended service, to the extent that that opens up a door to something other than serving a premises, duplicating service, and the idea of just becoming is the question you're trying to engage JNC as a co-op member and charging that co-op member, a service charge separate from a usage charge. Is that something illegal that WPL can complain on? That may be true, but I don't know if this complaint has invoked the commission's jurisdiction to investigate that. I don't know if to say, we're going to investigate what's being petitioned for and what's being complained of. Has that been raised as an issue in this case, prior to now?
Your Honor, you have that on the
Yes.
screen. So under the request for resetting, we say, we first find that they have exclusive right to serve. Under number 2, this is where we specifically allege it, illegally extended electric service and made a primary voltage extension to the premises. And we cite 196.4951M. 196.4951M says, has 2 parts, part A and part B. Part A separately prohibits extending or rendering service. Part B separately prohibits making a primary voltage extension. And the statute says it's a prohibition on providing service. The record that we submitted in the exhibits is that they installed facilities on our premises that we were serving, according to our view of the world. And then it somewhat is unexpected in the testimony that it appears to be Scenic's position that putting 2 meters on a premises was not extending service. And the basis for that is what we like to explore with this witness.
Your Honor, again, if you can point directly to testimony rather than characterizing it, that's one thing. Second, I note that the petition did not differentiate between 1MA or 1MB. So that's an issue. If that's truly going to be the basis for getting into this line of questioning. Furthermore, 1MA is referring to extending or rendering electric service directly or indirectly to the premises of any person already receiving electric service directly or indirectly from another public utility or another cooperative association. 1MB, a primary voltage extension to serve the premises of any person not receiving electric service. Their whole premise, not to reuse words here, but their premise is that this was a premises that was receiving electric service. 1MB is based on the notion that there is not service being rendered to a premise and service is available from another public utility or another cooperative through a secondary voltage extension. That's the 500-foot rule. This case is not a 500-foot rule case. That's one of the items I highlighted at the outset of this hearing. They may use the words primary voltage extension in their petition, but they have done nothing to advance a case based on 1MB. The only thing that could conceivably be an extension exceeding 500 feet is that 950-foot underground distribution line that wasn't even serving what they characterize as the premises. So they're attempting to springboard off of 1MB for this line of questioning, where that line of questioning really has no relationship to 1MB, is contrary to their own position as it relates to service being already rendered to the premises, and is a claim that just simply has not been developed in this record.
It's not a one, we cited 1M, which encompasses A and B. We separately say service and primary voltage extension. Our question for Mr. Knapp is not a primary voltage question. It's directly responsive to his rebuttal. Knapp says, line 15, Scenic was not providing service to any structure on the premises. Question we'd like to present to the witness was, it had installed 2 meters on the premises as we define it. was it charging J&C for those meters?
Your Honor, Mr. Ramirez just got done defending this line of questioning based on the reference to primary voltage extension. The only place that that appears is in one MB.
It's not a primary voltage, it's a render service, Your Honor.
Yeah, okay, so I'll allow the questions. I think if we look at the petition, I'm gonna read it liberally. It doesn't exclude, 186, 495, 1MA, it cites simply 1M, so to be inclusive of both subsections. I think that we have, situation where the information could clarify what's been filed so far in testimony. We do have documents in the record that lead to this line of questioning. So let's get an answer for this. To the extent that this goes beyond the bounds of the commission's jurisdiction or what the parties can argue is in the scope of this case, do so on briefing, and the commission can evaluate that on its own accord.
And Your Honor, I guess before we go further,
Sure.
specifically around risk of briefing, I think it would be very helpful if there was some clarity made on the record today, whether or not Power and Light in any way is making its case on 1MB. I'm hearing when they say 1M, they mean 1MA and B. But yet again, there's been no evidence to make a case under 1MB. So are we going to be briefing 1MA and 1MB or just 1MA? My suspicion is it's the former, but I think at some point we should have clarity before we leave today.
I don't agree with that. Like, there's no requirement that we divulge our legal strategy to you all. I think it's clear from the face of our complaint, from the evidence that we've submitted, you know, what evidence is there, and you know, you're free to brief whether we have made a sufficient claim on that or not. But, I think our complaint is pretty clear at this point.
Your Honor, Scenic Rivers has a due process right to know what the allegations are against it. And to just say, we're not going to divulge our legal strategy, it needs to be clear what statutes it is that they allege apply. And they have not been clear about that in that petition. And now to go back and forth between 1MA and 1MB today, all I'm asking for, Your Honor, is that there be clarity directed from Your Honor on, are we briefing 1MA? Are we briefing 1MB? Are we briefing 1MA and B? There shouldn't be surprise as to what statutes are actually at issue and before the commission.
Your Honor's pre-hearing order issues list provides the clarity and provided the clarity Attorney Woodward is looking for. Your issues list specifically has enumerated not only all of 196.495, but 196.495 1L. To the extent that Attorney Woodward picked up on only one portion of 1M and one subparagraph and not both, that is not an issue of lack of clarity that Your Honor has provided.
Your Honor, it's not a matter of what we may or may not have picked up on months ago. It's a matter of what is the evidence that they presented in this case. And Your Honor, this has not been a primary versus secondary voltage extension case, but suddenly it seems that as though Power and Light wants to allow for that possibility. And that, to me, is a problem, and it's a due process problem for somebody trying to respond and defend its legal rights before the commission.
Well, if there's an issue as to what will be briefed, we can separate the briefing schedule. And at least we'll alleviate a due process issue. So I can have the petitioner complaints go first. And the respondent go second, and then have a third round with reply to both on both sides. So I don't agree that there's a due process issue, and I don't agree that there's that we need to provide some sort of clarity as to what the arguments will be. I think we did, the issues list does cite 1M, and if a party wishes to brief on that statute, it may do so to its benefit or its demise. And if whatever arguments that party raises can be refuted by the other party. So there's your due process accommodation. So if there's confusion and it seems like we may derail the case because of that, I would rather deal with that proactively so we can have a first round by petitioner complainants, second round by respondent, and then a third round with as a dual respondent petitioner complainant round. So if that's resolving the issue, I'll allow the question. We can deal with the scheduling after we're done with the witnesses. So let's go ahead with pending questions for the witness.
Your Honor, if I could there's just one thing I wanted to add.
There we go. I knew I'd get you to talk eventually.
Might offer some clarity for Your Honor, because I was just looking back at the issue statement.
Okay.
The pre-hearing conference memorandum. And I guess the only thing that jumped out to me as far as this debate between 1M, A, and B is the actual text of that issue statement. I'm looking at sub B. Says, has SREC extended electric service and made a primary voltage extension in violation of the statute? And the primary voltage extension language, as we've been talking about, really derives from sub B. So to the extent that that word and is there, it seems that it's contemplating sub B, but I just thought I would add that if that adds any clarity. Other than that, we don't have a position.
Does Your Honor wish for more? We are willing to stipulate the briefing schedule you offered with our ability to ask the questions. To the extent.
Yeah, let's go ahead with questions.
Do you need the original question? Do you need the question?
Yeah, if you're able to find it, read it.
Yeah, I found it about.
He's way ahead of us. See, if I just asked you what I should do.
Mr. Knapp, I want to sort of switch gears here a little bit and ask you, are you generally familiar with the charges that Scenic Rivers assesses against its customers?
So we have a daily fixed charge for all of our meters. It's either $1.31 or 33 a day. I don't remember off the top of my head, and we charge, depending on what rate structure they're on, so much a kilowatt hour.
Okay, so you'd agree then that there's an energy charge and basically a fixed fee charge?
I would agree to that, yes.
Okay. And the fixed fee, I just want to clarify, you said the fixed charge is $1.33 a meter?
Per day.
Per day?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Your Honor, may I approach the witness? I have
The copy that,
Yeah.
You don't have a copy. Yes, go ahead. So just, when you sit down. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Knapp, I've just presented you with a document. Can you describe it for me?
Objection, foundation, yeah, he hasn't even asked if he's seen it before.
Have you seen this document before?
I saw it yesterday when it was emailed.
Okay. Have you seen it at any time prior to that?
No,
Okay, but again, you are generally familiar with the charges that Scenic assesses against its customers?
Yes,
And are you also generally familiar with, I guess, the, strike that. Are you also generally familiar with how Scenic Energy's, bills to customers look?
I am.
Okay, so does the image on this document appear to depict a template for a Scenic Rivers energy bill?
It does.
Okay. And so I want to refer you to the first page. I guess there's only one page, but the front page where it says your electric bill has a new look. On the right-hand side, number 11, there's a description for a fixed charge, correct?
Yes,
And that covers the cost, that fixed charge covers the cost of, among other things, having a meter at the customer's site, correct?
that is correct.
Okay, and is that fixed charge described here the same as the $1.33 charge per meter that you just mentioned earlier?
No, this is old, so this was back when it was, I don't even know how much that is per day. 40-some cents a day or 50 cents a day, so this is an old document. We charge, like I said, I think it's $1.31 or 33, I don't remember off the top of my head per day.
Okay, but I guess I'm just asking generally, the per meter charge that you're describing right now, that would correspond to the fixed charge depicted on this bill?
That's correct.
It's just, you're saying the amount is correct. Okay, understood. So I guess my question is, this fixed charge would also apply for the meters that Scenic Rivers installed along US Highway 151,
That is correct.
okay? And it would also apply for the meter that Scenic Rivers installed at the terminus of its underground distribution line along Old Highway Road.
That is correct.
And the 2 meters that were installed along US Highway 151, those remain in place, correct?
They remain there, yes.
Okay. All right, Your Honor, I would like to move this document into the record as map exhibit 8.
Checked. Again, the testimony is what it is. I don't see what purpose this document itself actually serves as record evidence. Particularly when we know at minimum, some of the information as to the actual charge amounts isn't even accurate or up to date. I suspect there's other information, just seeing that, you know, the addresses aren't the current addresses of the co-op.
Yeah, Your Honor, I think he confirmed that the general structure of the charges are correct, even if the amounts are not exactly right. I also think it provides important context around the fixed charge, and you know, I'll represent that we pulled this straight off of Scenic's website, so I don't really think its authenticity can be in doubt here.
Yeah, I just don't think it really adds to the record. I think we have the testimony, and he answered your question based on the document, but the document itself doesn't appear to be essential to the answers, so I'm gonna leave it out.
Okay.
I guess I'm kind of surprised at the line of questionings in that there wasn't just the bills to J&C produced. Was that not available or not asked for?
Your Honor, we issued a discovery request for that would cover that. However, we issued that I think it was last week sometime. So we haven't been able to have a response yet.
Okay. So I suppose, I mean, do we know that those charges were made to J&C?
Your Honor, I don't know exactly. The discovery that he references, our response for objection is due at 1:30. I'll advise you, Your Honor, we intend to provide notice of objection. If they want to meet and confer after, we're willing to do so. But I think the discovery that came in at 4:55 on Friday really is not an issue that can be resolved at this hearing.
Yes, okay. I guess I would just want to keep parties and staff tuned into the concept that if the evidence, if bills don't exist, or if there is evidence that the charges were not made, we need to get that in the record. So to the extent that there's a way of finding that out, or to the extent that discovery reveals that the JNC was not charged that amount, then we'll need to clarify that for the record.
Your Honor, I guess my concern with that is it presupposes that our objections, and we intend, to be clear, we intend to answer solely by objection. I have not engaged in full investigation of their requests because we find them to be wholly harassing, irrelevant. I'm not gonna get into that.
Mhm.
So, Your Honor, what you just stated presupposes, I think, the outcome is SREC objects and those objections will never be sustained. So that is my concern with, to the extent that was a ruling, with that being the ruling.
Yeah, no, I guess I was presuming before I heard the whole situation here. So I guess I would just keep it in mind that, I mean, to the extent that there's evidence that counts against the current testimony, it would be SREC's responsibility to bring that forward and its choice to bring that forward. Otherwise, the record will stand as it is.
Your Honor, I guess also to that point, why don't they just ask the question today? If there's a question about a specific charge being assessed to JNC, that question could be posed. I would make the same objections, but we've heard your rulings thus far, so I understand the likely answer. So I guess why doesn't that question just get posed?
Okay, yeah, well, let's do that. To the
Yeah,
extent the witness knows.
I think we did ask the question, Your Honor.
Mhm.
I think we asked whether the fixed charge would have applied for installation of the 2 meters on Highway 151 and the one at the end of the underground distribution line along Old Highway Road, and the witness responded yes.
Yeah, but would apply is different than had they billed JNC and did JNC pay that bill. So let's have the witness answer
I think
that
that probably gets us a lot further and it may save some issues.
to the extent the witness
Address
knows.
that on the record.
Okay, so Mr. Knapp, did Scenic Rivers assess a fixed charge for the installation of the 2 meters along US Highway 151 against JNC Realty?
Scenic Rivers billed JNC Realty for a monthly charge because they use no kilowatt hours for 1 or 2 months, and then JNC Realty asked that those services be taken out of their name. So they're sitting in, their meters are there. They're sitting in an idle state right now. So they did receive a bill for 1 or 2 months.
Okay. And I just wanna clarify. So those meters were installed in May of 2023, right? So they would have gotten a bill for a fixed charge for, you're saying, May, June and July of
Yep.
2023.
Without looking it up, which I don't have access to here, roughly, yes.
Okay, all right. What about the meter at the end of the distribution line on Old Highway Road? Would JNC have received, or would JNC have been assessed a fixed charge for that meter as well?
Same thing.
Same thing, okay. Okay.
Okay, and just curious if you knew if they paid those charges?
They did.
Just a point of clarification, Your Honor, I just want to make sure, and maybe it would be helpful to pull up, exhibit WP&L Olson 1. When we're talking about the 2 meters along Highway 151, I just want to make sure everyone's talking about the same thing. Scroll up maybe a little bit. It's those 2 meters at 2 yellow dots at
Correct.
the top portion. Okay, and then Attorney Zappo's previous or latest question would be the yellow dot then at the.
Correct.
Okay, it's the yellow dot, in parcel 116-985. This. Anything else? Oh, you have more questions?
Sorry, Your Honor. Yeah,
Go
I just have a couple more questions here.
Sure.
So switching gears from the charges altogether.
Please do.
Yeah.
I guess, based on the line of question that was just asked, to the extent that you were directing or ordering certain information, I believe that has been dealt with now, and we'll handle the discovery issue separately if necessary.
Yeah.
Are we all on the same page?
I'm on that page, yes. Great, thanks.
Okay, so Mr. Knapp, just one last set of questions here. So I'll refer you to Olson Exhibit 3, if we can pull that up on the screen and go to, page 13, which is the bait stamp 2471. Yeah, if we can just scroll up a little. Yep, perfect. Perfect, thank you. So, Mr. Knapp, this is an email from Chad Olmsted to you. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And what's the date on the email?
May 22nd, 2023.
Okay, and, who is Chad Olmsted?
Project manager at Scenic Rivers.
Do you have an understanding of his job responsibilities, like generally?
Yes, I do.
What are those responsibilities?
He's responsible for the staking engineers. He does all of our mapping. He is responsible for coordinating our underground contractors.
And he's indicating that there's a map, which is, I think, I'll just turn to the next page. And I'll give you a chance just to look at that. Mr. Knapp, do you recall reviewing this map?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And if we look at the map, it's depicting, among other things, the WPL distribution line along Old Highway Road, correct?
Yes, it is.
And I guess to take a step back, why was Chad sending you this email and this map in the first place, if you recall?
Because we were unaware of a gas service down there, so we wanted to do some clarification with it.
Okay. Okay. So the map also depicts what people have been referring to as the service drop, WPL service drop to the residents and agricultural outbuildings on what is parcel 046960. You see that?
I see that.
Okay. So as of May 2023, you personally were aware of WPL's distribution facilities on and around what WPL has characterized as the premises, correct?
When we looked at that, there's a parcel, that house is parceled off separately.
Understood, but you were aware that WPL had distribution facilities in that area?
Yes, we were.
Okay. And were you aware of that even before May of 2023?
Yeah, we were aware that they have facilities in the area.
Okay. I think that's all the questions I have.
All right, commission staff, any questions? No question. Redirect?
Just briefly while we have this
Sure.
document up, so now if you see towards the bottom left, an arrow pointing at SREC existing line,
I'm sorry, they were pointing at.
left at SREC existing line.
I do.
Is that the SREC three-phase distribution line that you referred to in your testimony at various points?
That's correct.
To be clear, can you describe for us where that distribution line actually runs with respect to this image on the screen?
It runs parallel to Highway 151, kind of going, northeast.
Nothing further.
Okay. Great. Thanks very much. You're excused. All right, so any outstanding issues besides that new briefing schedule?
I don't believe so.
I don't think so, Your Honor.
All right, and all right, let's save that. Okay, so let's get to that. Bring up the calendar. Okay. So at this point, it looks like we have an initial brief. We have two simultaneously filed briefs on the schedule right now. The initial brief was June 12th and the reply brief June 19th. So I propose we just add a third brief. We can give how many days we think you'll need. We can give a week, we can give more. I don't think staff, do you have any concern about extending the time frame for getting the record completed?
Given the short period of time that you're talking about, I don't think that would make a difference.
Your Honor, but make a suggestion.
Sure.
Understanding the willingness of WPL to bifurcate the initial briefing. And perhaps we could communicate off record to determine if that actually will be necessary. And if so, to work out a proposed schedule. Sure. If that's okay with ALJ, keeping in mind that if there is a shift, we're probably talking about like a week to 10 days or something.
Okay, yeah, if staff's not concerned with the timing, I can allow the parties to work out stipulation to changing, modifying, adjusting the briefing schedule however they want. You just want to file an agreement, and then it'll take effect immediately. If you can represent that all parties and staff stipulate, and you'll not need to hear from me. If you can't get into agreement, let's give you till Friday, or do you need some more time?
No, I think that's fair, and if we don't, I guess we'll, SRC's position would be referred to how, a date that ALJ identifies.
Okay, so I'll just await an answer. Well, yeah, I'll await an answer by end of business on Friday. Otherwise, I'll just set a deadline, and it'll be 3 rounds like I described.
That works for us, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks very much, everyone. We're adjourned. Take care.